Good morning and welcome to Health Talk, sponsored by Mon General Hospital. This program is designed to provide education on vital health topics to help you take charge of your health. You'll also be introduced to Mon General's committed physicians, allied healthcare professionals, and quality programs and services. And now, here are your Health Talk hosts, Kay Murray and Jim Stallings.
I guess we need a definition, first of all. Advanced directives, what does that mean?
Advanced directives and advanced care planning. We want to anticipate if we have a health problem, if we're not able to speak for ourselves, if there's something that happens, we want to be able to make a statement about what we would want to have done. It's important to think ahead, plan ahead. There are different forms of advanced directives. There's the medical power of attorney and the living will, and in West Virginia those can be combined also. All of us should have at least a medical power of attorney so that if we were in an accident, if something happened, who would we want to speak for us? Who would understand our values? If we don't have that information, the state law says that it would be a spouse, a parent, the oldest sibling. You might not want those people to be making decisions for you. So by being able to name someone, that gives more control. Your wishes then would be followed more.
Tell us about what a chaplain's involvement is in these decisions.
What I can do is work with somebody to help them through the process of making those decisions. Maybe even bringing somebody in from your own faith group. You might have questions about what is the proper way to put that together. Jehovah's Witnesses, for example, have their own advanced directive because of blood products. So just being sensitive to your own faith tradition, to your own values, I can help facilitate that.
Have you found families troubled by the fact that they didn't take care of this prior to a decision being made or decisions being made?
Definitely. It can be very stressful when the family members never have had that discussion with a loved one. All of a sudden, they're placed in a position to make some hard decisions. And without that discussion beforehand, it can become very troubling. So naming somebody is very important to do.
And I know that planning ahead is the way to go. You don't wait until you're diagnosed with something, and I mean you can, but you can make decisions right now even though you may be with us for a lot longer.
Correct. This doesn't have to do with being terminally ill or coming to the end of life. Any of us can be involved in an accident, and our lives can change in an instant. So the advanced directive or the living will would only come into play whenever you weren't able to speak for yourself. And then the living will part is how you would want to be treated if you were not going to recover. So one physician has to say that you are not going to recover or you're going to be terminally ill. And then that's when it would come into effect. If you're going to recover, the living will not come into effect at all. So some people are worried that if they fill one of these out, then nothing's going to be done to help them, and that's far from the reality.
Let's suppose in the past I have filled out forms for advanced directives, power of attorney, medical power of attorney, and something happens to me today and I'm not able to speak. how will my caregivers know that I did fill something out several years ago and that I do have wishes that I want to be granted?
Good question. You should let your family know that you have done this. In fact, if you're going to fill out a medical power of attorney form, you want to tell the person who you've chosen so that they're not surprised. And then you want to let your physician know. My physician has a copy of my Advanced Directive. My wife and the two other people that I've named as backup also have copies. Yearly, when I have my annual wellness appointment with my doctor, I go over my Advanced Directive and I look at it again. But you do want to have that conversation. And there's a lot of information out there. The West Virginia Center for End-of-Life Care, their website has some tips on talking to family members, but you don't want to do it in isolation. Now in West Virginia, you can also have your Advanced Directive to become part of the e-Directive registry, so that if you opt into that program and fax your Advanced Directive to the center, it would always be available to health care facilities throughout the state. A lot of times people will do an Advanced Directive and put it in a bank vault, or it's hard to get your hands on it when you need it. So the advantage now is that you could register and have it uploaded to this site, and it would always be accessible.
I was talking yesterday with a consultant in IT Mindshare, and we were talking about how computers are a big part of healthcare now. Hospitals are converting our files and records over to an electronic basis. And so I would think if our primary hospital or primary caregiver, our doctor, has our file online, there's probably a tab in there somewhere that has the Advanced Directive information in it. So when you're checked into the hospital, they bring up your files and bring up your history, and they can find that easily.
That's true. And we keep those always in the file. So if you're readmitted, your Advanced Directive would be there. But we need it to begin with. So once it's in the system, then it's easy to pull it up again. You can change your Advanced Directive. That's another time. People sometimes feel, what if I change my mind? You can always do another Advanced Directive. The most current Advanced Directive would be the one that we would follow. So again, it's not locked in once you do it. It can be changed.
We designate a person to make those primary decisions, and oftentimes it's our spouse. For instance, it's my wife. And you mentioned those second and third persons on the list, because if something should happen to my wife and I together, then it would default to the second and or maybe the third person on the list. Should we notify those second and third people too that, hey, just in case?
Yes, definitely you should. And you want to have these discussions, like, for example, my son, who's in his early 30s, is not one of the decision makers for me. Because when I had the discussion with him, he seemed uncomfortable with what I would want. And so I knew right then to eliminate him. I chose a cousin who has had experience within her own family, and a nurse that I work with who is a friend. So it doesn't necessarily have to be, a family member. I would like my son consulted, but I wouldn't want him to be a decision maker. The same thing with my sister. She weighs things. She's always trying to look at the balance, going back and forth. I know that it would be very difficult for her to make a decision. So these are some things that we want to think about. Who would be able to handle this under stress and under duress? So we need to give some forethought to that too.
Living wills, powers of attorney. If you have a question this morning on Advanced Directives, call us at 304-296-0041. When we come back from the break, let's get specific in what is being asked of us to determine on who's going to make these decisions. And we'll do that coming up in just a moment. You're listening to Health Talk on WAJR.
The doctors, the latest news and procedures. Your local health connection is Mon General's Health Talk. If you'd like to be on the show, call 304-296-0041.
Mon General's Chaplain Ed Horvat, our guest today, and we're talking about Advanced Directives, and we are going to be talking about a special day, April 16th, National Healthcare Decisions Day. I also do a show called, it was with Doreen Seaman of Seaman Law Offices, Elder Law Answers, and she deals specifically with planning ahead for our demise. We're all going to die sometime, and I think maybe as I was getting towards 50, I thought, maybe I need to get something done here. And doing that show for a long time, I think finally got to me. And my wife and I did take care of our advanced directives, among other things. And what Doreen and I talk about on the show sometimes is it's almost a gift that you give to your loved ones that are going to remain behind when you go ahead and make decisions ahead of time, because you may die unexpectedly, you may not die unexpectedly, but there may come a point where you're still alive, but you can't make decisions, you can't speak, and that happens more and more in America every day. And so it's almost a gift if you can do these things ahead of time for your loved ones, so that when the time comes, they're not wrought with fear and worry about making these decisions.
I see that all the time when this discussion has not happened or if somebody has not had an advance directive. The survivors, the family, they're in distress. They don't know how to proceed. They've never had that discussion. I like the way you put it, as a gift. It is something that we can do for our loved ones. And like you said, we're all perishable, and sometimes we just lose sight of that. But our lives can change in a blink of an eye, and it's good to have that planning done.
Yeah, leading up to 50, a lot of us think we're invincible, and we think, well, I got lots of time left. And then when you get around 50, you think, I got less time left than I've lived so far, probably in most cases. And when it comes to appointing someone medical power of attorney, what kind of decisions will they need to make, or could they need to make, if you can't make the decisions anymore?
Right. Well, if you're in a coma and not expected to recover, they would be asked questions about life support. If you've had that discussion, and if you're not expected to recover, what did your loved one have to say about life support? Maybe a trial period. So that is something there.
And we've seen cases where no, Matthew would have never wanted to be hooked up to a machine. Well, you've barely seen Matthew for the 15 years past. How would you know? I've seen him almost every day, and I think he would want to stay alive. So you get that down in writing, and there's not that kind of family friction going on either.
Right. That's a good point, and I want to bring up an advantage of having our advanced directive uploaded to the e-registry directive. Once we send that into that agency, they are going to review it. If there's anything that's conflicting, they're going to get in contact with you for clarification. So an example of a problem that we had recently, it was in the last couple weeks, we had a patient in the hospital. She did her advanced directive, but she named all of her children as the primary person to speak for her, which created a lot of problems because, exactly as you're saying, each child had a different way to look at that, what mom would want. So if that had been uploaded to the e-registry directive, they would have reviewed that and they would have said, you can't name multiple people. There has to be one that will speak for you.
Yeah, a lot of people just download a form online and fill it out and then submit that, but you really do need advice from somebody as you're filling that out.
Yes.
I think.
Yeah.
What other kind of decisions in medical powers of attorney? Is there anything else besides determining whether someone's sustaining life via machine or not?
Something under consideration maybe for a younger person, and this was a little unusual. I had never thought of it before. But there was a young man. And he was in his 20s. He was an only child. The parents wanted his sperm harvested because they wanted grandchildren. An ethics committee met. This didn't happen in our hospital, but an ethics committee met and determined that they would not harvest his sperm because he was not married. He had never discussed whether or not he would want children. But that opened my eyes to the possibility of, had he been married, or even if he was not married, that is a decision that perhaps somebody can take into consideration, enter it into your advanced directive. I mean, it was the furthest thing away from my mind, but, you know, if you were married, you were planning to have children, something happened, would you want your sperm harvested? So, you know, you can really think about it in a broad way.
What does a living will do?
A living will talk about exactly what you would want to happen if you were approaching the end of life. So only under those conditions and those circumstances there would it come into play. That's where you would be making your decisions about being connected to a breathing machine. I forgot the nutrition part. If you would want food and fluids, you know, that can be very difficult for family members too. As we're coming to the end of our life, naturally, we don't want to take food in. Our body is shutting down. And a lot of times, families don't understand what's happening, and they are forcing or coaxing the person to eat. So that's another area of discussion. At any time, if a family is having difficulty in a hospital or a nursing home or any health care, there's usually an ethics committee there. Families can always bring the ethics committee in to consult with over these difficult decisions too.
Well, if it's been a very informative show so far, but if you'd like to learn more, we're going to tell you about an open house coming up, an Advanced Directive open house on April 16th, and we'll talk about that when we come back. You're listening to Health Talk from Mon General on WAJR.
This is Mon General's Health Talk, providing the information you need to take charge of your health. Call us now with your health-related questions at 304-296-0041.
Well, perhaps you think you're ready to get your advanced directives in place, but it may be daunting. Maybe you're not online, you don't have a computer, maybe you don't have anybody to consult with. There's an open house coming up that we want to let you know about. And Ed, it's coming up on Tuesday, April 16th. And what will we be able to do at the open house?
We will have advanced directive forms there, medical power of attorney, living will, or the combined. We will have notaries there. If you want to complete your advanced directive there, you can discuss that with members of the Ethics Council who will be there. You could have it notarized and finalized. You could choose to opt into the e-registry directive, and we'll get that faxed over to them. So you can get that taken care of. If that's too much, you can at least stop in and get some information and start the process, start thinking about it. We'll be there from 10 a.m. until 2 p.m. right outside the cafeteria. You might want to stop in for lunch and complete your advanced directive right after tax day. You've taken care of your taxes, and you can take care of this other important business also.
So if you kind of want to be a wallflower and kind of stay in the background, you can pick up some information and
Correct.
Take it home with you and maybe talk about it with one of your family members. So you're invited to stop by, pick up the information, talk to folks, see a notary. You can have the forms filled out there.
Correct.
And then Mon General will take the information and put it where it needs to be, upload it, so to speak, correct?
That's right.
All right, and National Healthcare Decisions Day was first held in 2008, and it's a grassroots effort to promote advanced care planning and healthcare decision making, which has been the topic on today's program. And more information can be found by calling Michelle Hopkins at Morgantown Hospice at 285-2777. That's 304-285-2777. Thanks, Ed.
You're welcome. Thank you.
You've been listening to Health Talk, brought to you by Mon General and the voice of Morgantown, WHAR.